In March of 1995, my daughter was injured in an automobile accident in Hanford, California. She had gone to a dance practice and it was like 8:30 at night, and a drunk driver ran a stop sign. It was in the residential area about 5 minutes from our house. She was T-boned by a drunk driver, and she was in a coma immediately, and she had many internal injuries. And she was taken to the local ER, but her injuries were so severe that they helicoptered her to Fresno, to the VMC here. And she was in intensive care for 35 days, and they did quite a few surgeries.
I was driving with two friends, and a drunk driver ran a stoplight or stop sign and T-boned my car on my side, and all three of us girls were hurt, but me the worst. And they cut me out of the car and then took me to the Hanford community to stabilize me. And then from there I was airlifted to Fresno, to VMC.
She was in a coma for 2.5 months. Jessica suffered many injuries in the accident, the worst being the traumatic brain injury, which affected her speech. She couldn't walk or talk, and that's what we began 10 years of trying to get her to walk and to talk. And she also had a broken hip bones, front and back. They were smashed, and her pelvic bone, her spleen, her liver were pierced. Oh, before the accident, I have to admit, she was an ideal child. She was a very good student. She was taking college prep courses in high school, and she was a wonderful dancer. And she had won a scholarship to go to a dance studio, The Edge in Los Angeles. And she would walk in a room and everybody would just turn to look at her. She was beautiful, nice, and a great daughter. I first heard about neurofeedback the day that our physical therapist discontinued Jessica's case and left us all by ourselves. We were really scared, but they had been working a month with her on a walker, trying to get her to learn to walk on a walker. She would take one step and she'd start to fall to the left. So she wasn't walking very well on the walker. I tried not to cry in front of Jessica because I was devastated. I didn't know what to do. So they gave me a prescription for a brand new walker and a pamphlet and a business card. And on the business card, it was Neuropathways. And I just put it in my purse because I was almost as sad as I was the night of the wreck because I didn't know what to do or if I was be able to do anything more for Jessica. And anyway, that's how we learned about Margaret.
When I first met Margaret Ayers, I was in the throes of a terrible depression. My professional life was very successful, but where it mattered the most, in my head and in my heart, I was a mess. Looking back, I felt like my brain was out of tune, that I was misfiring in this spew of grit and smoke that just turned everything dark and very troubling. Margaret hooked up electrodes to the side of my head and hooked me up to a computer. Right there on that screen, I could see my own brain waves firing. And what I came to understand is that if you can see your brain waves, then you can change them. And by changing them, you can heal yourself. So when the neurologists say there's nothing more they can do for you, when the physical therapists say good luck, when the school wants to medicate your child, when the psychiatrist can only write more prescriptions, there's a path they haven't pointed you towards. This is Margaret Ayers. She is the inventor of the world's first real-time EEG feedback instrumentation. Neurofeedback is the only means by which to examine and analyze how the brain is working in real time. Neurofeedback is completely non-invasive. There is no stimulation going into the body. There is no electricity going into the body. Whenever Margaret gets a new client, she analyzes both sides of the brain. Her instrumentation breaks down the brain waves into raw EEG and into beta waves and theta waves.
So first we're going to look at your left sensory motor cortex. We're going to hook up with surface electrodes. Nothing goes into you, nothing can harm you. We're going to look at the temporal lobe and the upper cerebral cortex and put a reference point on your ear. Now, because you can see your brain waves in real time, you can change them just like you look in the mirror in the morning to comb your hair in place. Because you can see your hair, you can comb your hair into place. Well, think of this as the mirror for your brain. Because you can see your brain firing, it is a mirror for you to comb your brain waves into place. How does that sound?
Sounds really strange.
Yes.
By means of real-time feedback, you can see your brain waves the instant they are produced, in less than 1,000th of a second. All of our senses, touch, eyesight, hearing, joint perception, come within 1,000th of a second. They are the unconscious features of our body. If you deliver feedback at the speed of the senses, the learning that happens becomes unconscious and intrinsic. Intrinsic means that the learning comes from within, not from the outside. It's like learning to ride a bicycle, and it becomes permanent through repetition. This is Dr. Penny Montgomery, Margaret Ayer's partner.
A little ear clip.
Yes.
Okay. And then we're going to put one right here.
Emma, see those big spikes in the top line? Those are the spikes that are causing your headaches. And if we get rid of those, then the headaches will start to go away. First, they'll be less intense and less frequent, and they'll completely go away. So all you have to do is keep the theta down as low as you can. That's the yellow bar. Try to keep it beeping as low as you can. And we're going to get rid of those spikes in your brainwave pattern.
5-1.
5-1, so this side's a little higher.
Yeah. And this
The
is where
higher
she's-
the voltage,
This
the
is
more
where she has her
problems
headaches.
on the
This,
side.
and this is the side she gets the headaches.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to look at the PBV and we're going to see what happened when she started here at 589. Her high was 7.6 and she went through the 6s, and then in the last 5 minutes she was in the 5s. So she came down, and that's very good. That's a good indication that neurofeedback is going to be a beneficial treatment for her. We're seeing some other pathology right here. When you look at these patterns that are real wide at the bottom, they're indicative of having had an old viral or bacterial infection where there was a high fever.
That's very interesting because this whole thing, her headache started after a virus.
Okay. Well, this is definitely consistent with that, and we're seeing that she has quite a significant change in her EEG due to this. This is an EEG of an individual with no sign of pathology whatsoever. In the top line, which is the raw EEG, you see all of the frequencies from 0 to about 450 cycles per second. In the second line, we have filtered out a narrow bandpass of 15 to 18 cycles per second. That's the brain's good energy and is called beta. The bottom line is filtered out 4 to 7 cycles per second, and that's called theta. Most pathology is reflected in an increase in theta. All brain waves look different, except when there's some pathology. The pathology itself has a signature that when it occurs in the brainwave pattern, you can see it, and it looks alike in every brainwave that has it.
People who have depression all have the same exact waveform. People who have migraine headaches have the same waveform. People who have epilepsy have the same waveform. So instead of being unique, they all look alike.
If Fraser was diagnosed as AHAD, he would be interested in everything else but what was going on. He'd get bored very, very easily. If they were discussing a subject that Fraser thought was boring, then he would, go out of his seat to find something else that was more interesting, like a different book, or he would tell his teacher, I've read that 10 times, I need to, where's the library? So he was constantly definitely destructive in class. When we went to the doctor suggested that Fraser should be on Adderall and 0.5, I believe. We got the prescription and we gave it to Fraser, but immediately I seen results of Fraser just sort of vegging out, being very quiet, which I guess helped well at the school, but I felt his personality was disappearing.
I'd be like alive in the morning, then you take the pill and you're tired again. It's annoying. And then like the pill usually stopped at 7 o'clock. So after that, I'd get more active. Like I'd go back to normal, and I wouldn't sleep.
Yeah, he'd have 2 bites to eat at breakfast time, and then nothing at lunch. I would pick him up at 3, and he hadn't eaten since 6 in the morning. I would be white and ready to faint, and still didn't want to eat. So it's a big problem getting him to eat any food.
I was never hungry. Like if I was hungry, it was like a miracle.
And regardless of the time, it could have been 2 in the morning. I would have got up and made a meal.
Just random times in the day.
I had concerns about that situation, and I again went to my doctor and I said the medication may be helping in school, but you know, Fraser's not eating, he's not sleeping, and they advised me to keep him on the medication and things would get better, but they didn't.
I'm Jamie Smith's uncle. He was born 6 months, 5.5 months premature. He was less than a pound when he was born. He has one vocal cord. He was on life support systems for the first year of his life, and then had a colostomy because he has part of his colon is gone now. He had a colostomy bag that was on for like the first 4 years, so it was pretty difficult. Didn't know that he was blind until he was about 9-10 months. That's when they knew for sure. He was a preemie. He was in prenatal care for many, first year of his life, just about. Jamie had severe cerebral palsy when he was young. I guess you can hardly see it now, but that was he had all the signs of from a young age. We didn't know about it until years later. Rocking, perseverating, a difficulty with walking. Now he walks, great. Positions of the hands, things like that.
My life was like totally unethical, retarded, like perseveration on the same thing.
In public school system, you have to fight. Pretty much, they put him in a corner, and they said that he was uneducatable. He has a teacher that comes in 3 days a week to the house, and she works with him on spelling and academics.
Spelling, history, life skills. Since I've been going to Margaret is helping me, is trying to get me to control my perseveration, because it's the impulsivity that's bothering me.
My diagnosis was that I had a learning disability and I had dyslexia. I was a dyslexic person. The 3rd grade was when the teacher noticed that I was really, like she didn't know what was wrong with me, and she just thought that I was lazy. So they had a parent conference in those days. And I remember that she just knocked me down. I had to hide my disability because I didn't know I had a disability, and I believed what the teacher said, that I was lazy. So I just punished my own self. Spelling, forget. I mean, I had a real hard time spelling. I remember that I used to try, and I just could not believe my writing. It looked like chicken scratch. I said, who wrote this? So all the time I was amazed, and I tried my best, and I thought that I had it. But when it came out, I couldn't believe that was my writing, because everything was, misspelled, and my handwriting was so bad. Well, what I did is I hooked up with the best friends, very smart kids. And so I used to tell them, tell me what you read and what are the answers. So I used to get the answers from them and everything. So, but I didn't cheat, but I had to get with them so I could understand. So they were the ones that helped me, not the teacher, because we used to study together, and I never had a pencil with me, so they never knew that I couldn't write. I hid them from them. When I graduated, they had like occupational and what you're going to be, and they told me that my destiny was, after 12 years of education, was going to be work in be a laborer, work in a factory. And my other friends were all going to be doctors, whatever, you know, but with me I was a very good candidate for being in the factories.
This is an EEG of an individual with dyslexia. This is an adult with dyslexia, and this is before neurofeedback training. In the raw EEG, we see quite a number of spikes, as you can see. Here, theta reflects too much slow wave activity. In the after neurofeedback training, you can readily see how the EEG has changed. Note how much smaller it is, how much faster it is, and how much smaller the theta is as well. Margaret is best known for her work with head injury. As a matter of fact, she was the very first person to publish in this country on head injury. And this EEG is an example of her work with head injury. This is a closed head injury pattern in an individual who is an adult. And notice the spikes. The spikes are the characteristic pattern of closed head injury. This is an EEG of a 17-year-old with an open head injury. The distinguishing pattern in open head injury is spikes, clusters of spikes, and sharp waves. Looking at the raw EEG, we can readily see clusters of spikes, individual spikes, here, and several other places, here, and here. We can see clusters of spikes, here, and then the sharp waves indicate frank cellular damage, or quite a bit of damage in the brain. Sharp waves look like this. They're very wide at the base, and they're shaped like a tsunami. You can see one here, 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 you can see one here. So this individual has quite a few sharp waves, as well as spikes and clusters of spikes. At the same time, with all of this slow wave activity, spikes and sharp waves in the raw EEG, you're going to see high voltage theta, because that's where the damage shows up, in the theta band. So notice the amplitude of theta here before training. In the after training EEG, you notice that the theta is quite a bit smaller. Raw EEG is reflecting a much more normal pattern. The amplitude is smaller, and it's faster and tighter. This is an EEG of a young girl about 11 years old who had autism. As you can see, her EEG is quite wild looking, as was her behavior. She couldn't be taken out to shopping or to a restaurant at all, and had to be monitored continuously. The only noises she made were rather animal-like, and she didn't speak words. This is her before training EEG. Notice how wild the raw EEG is, and look at the theta, how dramatic the theta is. That's because there is so much slow wave activity in her brain that she's barely able to function. I saw this girl for a year, and at the end of a year, her EEG looked like this. Both the raw EEG in the top line and the theta in the third line are dramatically improved. Her behavior was also dramatically improved. She could be taken out shopping, and she could be taken to restaurants. She was beginning to make noises that were discernible, almost words, and as we continued to work after this, she began to say a few words.
Well, I'm doing so much better in music. I'm getting better at playing the piano, and I write music, I compose music. A year ago, I did my composition called The Wizard of Airs.
I think the work that Margaret does with Jamie, the biofeedback, has opened the doors for Jamie.
After the first time that I went back home, all of a sudden, it looked like my eyes were washed, and I could see. I mean, I could see the letters. I could see Stadium Way, you know. Before, I just knew that. I used to go, when people told me how to get there, I said, give me a landmark, because, you know, I couldn't read it that well. But then I started seeing clearer and clearer. I'm a counselor for child abuse, and I work in a hospital, Santa Monica. I want to encourage all parents, anybody with learning disabilities, or anybody that has tried everything, to try Margaret Ayers, because I have tried everything. Margaret took me out of prison, gave me a freedom, gave me a new world. I always tease Margaret, and I said, Margaret, you know what? I always thought that I needed a brain, and when I came here, this was Emerald City, and you were the wizard, and you gave me, I had it in me all the time. It's just that you just had to connect the dots.
As soon as we walked into Margaret's door, I must have rambled for half an hour because nobody else was listening as far as I was concerned. They didn't understand how upset we were at night, trying to get them to eat, trying to get them happy, because we do all these great things and there didn't seem to be much of a response from Fraser. So Margaret understood completely, and she says, no, you were right, get him off the medication, let's get him in and get him started. And I seen results right away when with the neurofeedback. I felt like Fraser was coming out his shell. He wasn't so quiet, he was more responsive. He decided after about 3 years to have his hair cut because it was getting really long and he kind of hid behind it. I've seen, physically, since he's come off the medication, become to Margaret, and I don't know if it's based on everything. He's more interested in everything. He put on 20 pounds, he grew at least 4 inches, and he started to look like a teenager. He filled out, as I say, he had much more confidence. We've been coming to Margaret consistently for 6 months, and in my opinion, Adderall medication may work for others, but certainly didn't work for Fraser. And Margaret Ayers has saved our life. Everybody's, the whole families, we're all able now to enjoy Fraser and enjoy every day.
Well, now it's going wonderfully. We go once a month to Los Angeles for neurofeedback. We feel very homey, very spiritual, very happy, joyous in her waiting room.
It's great being able to see the other people that are patients and discussing with them what happened to them. And it's just wonderful. It's like I have hope again.
3 years ago, when Jessica first came to Margaret, she couldn't take a couple of steps on a walker without falling. She could hardly talk. She had no memory of her accident or anything that came after. She was barely present. The future looked bleak. It seemed she had reached the end of the road. And now, for her and so many others, the way is open again.
Tweet at the end.
A tweet at the end?